necessarily just on a popular level, but also on an economic level.
Good talking to you, Nasreen. Nasreen Al-Shumaila, live for us in the Jordanian capital, Amman. Taking out some live pictures from Egyptian state television where we've got the Prime Minister, excuse me, of Egypt, speaking Ahmed Shafiq, and some of the lines we've heard coming out from him so far. He's saying the opposition is divided, weaker than before, and things are heading towards more stability. Also claiming there are no orders to obstruct the media's work, no orders to obstruct the media's work, but we at Al Jazeera know very clearly that there have been obstructions on our work, the reason that we don't name our correspondents when we speak to them. He has said that all complaints handed over to the government will be looked at. Yes, they will be looked at. All complaints handed over will be. So these are some of the comments coming out from the Egyptian Prime Minister, speaking live on Egyptian state television. On the line is one of our correspondents, keeping an eye on things in Cairo today. What do you make of this Egyptian Prime Minister now going more public and saying, as he says it, the opposition's divided and they're weaker than they were?
Well, no doubt about it that the Egyptian government is in crisis mode really on a few different fronts. There's no doubt that they're under intense pressure both domestically and internationally to try to at least project the image that the situation, if be it at crisis level, then they certainly are in control. From an economic point of view, the Egyptian economy is suffering a great deal in this political standoff, and there is a lot of concerns growing in Egypt about short-term worries over things like inflation of prices in terms of basic commodities, more importantly, revenue for the state, more importantly, the various functions of the state at different levels. You're seeing in the last 72 hours, somewhat of an aggressive push by the vice president and at least the prime minister, which, having covered Egypt for a very long time, I can tell you is somewhat unique to see so many Egyptian officials coming out and speaking so openly here, as you are seeing in this press conference. The prime minister, following his interview with other satellite channels and as well as that of the vice president, really trying to portray that the situation is being dealt with. There are now some negotiations taking place, a few different proposals, a few different tracks of dialogue taking place between the protesters and those that represent the opposition with the government on different levels. And at the same time, also trying to just allay some of the fears of ordinary Egyptian citizens who may not be caught up in this, day-to-day crisis and are worried about jobs, worried about prices. And I think that's what you're seeing the Egyptian government trying to do at this stage. One of the interesting things he said was that at some point, all of the opposition parties that are not even participating in the talks will eventually come around to dialogue because they feel that they're losing their public support or their moral support among ordinary Egyptians for the protest that has cost the Egyptian economy so much in such a short time.
Let's just pause for a moment because I've got some interesting numbers about the economy to expand on what you've been talking about. Credit Agricole Bank saying this unrest is costing, headline number, $310 million a day. The banks have been closed for a week, but the government expects some banks will start offering limited services on Sunday. It's peak tourist season, but the Prime Minister says 1 million visitors have fled the country. And because of the curfew and the unrest, many factories in the major cities have been shut down for days. Let's put some of that to one of our other correspondents on the line in Cairo at the moment. I mean, this is, it brings a city, it brings a country to a standstill. I heard stories, and well, and maybe you can confirm this, that no one could even get any money from a basic cash machine.
Well, the authorities had been seeking to address all these issues. I mean, certainly there have been announcements on television about pensions being paid, about money being delivered to the banks, and about food being delivered to the shops. What we're seeing here is an effort by Hosni Mubarak and the ministers whom he appointed in the last week to try as far as possible to create an illusion of business as usual, holding meetings, claiming that they're running the show, that they're going to regenerate the economy, that they are providing basic services and ensuring the delivery of fuel, food and money. That is certainly the kind of official narrative that they're trying to put across on state television. Evidently, people's experience on the ground will vary from place to place.
Thank you for that. Speaking to two different correspondents there in Cairo, it's sometimes difficult to get through to them because, as we say, we're not naming them for their own safety. That was Cairo. I want to have a look at the situation in Egypt's second largest city, which is Alexandria. Thousands gathered there in an attempt to drive Hosni Mubarak out of power on Friday. These pictures from get some insight into what's happening in Alexandria right now from another one of our team who's on the ground there. You were in amongst it all on Friday, saw the thousands of people. What's the day after like?
Yes, Kamal, the day after here in Alexandria, things are still slowly picking up in terms of marches and demonstrations that have been spread across the city. In one of the suburbs of Alexandria, Al-Wardiyan, a very poor neighborhood, a funeral procession has just started or just begun a few minutes ago of a young man who was shot by live fire last Friday, a week ago, and spent a week injured. People tried to, obviously, doctors tried to heal him. However, he passed away yesterday. That was from clashes between protesters and state security forces, the infamous battles we saw just over a week ago. So that's likely to rejuvenate a lot of the anti-government, anti-Mubarak sentiment that's already is evident for everybody to see here in Alexandria. Also, another demonstration has begun from the Qa'id Ibrahim Mosque, which is in downtown Alexandria near the commercial center, just off the main road by the sea. They're all trying to gather outside Sidi Gabr train station on the main road here in Egypt's second largest city, where they're trying to hold a sit-in. They did try and hold that sit-in from yesterday, that is Friday evening. However, the sheer amount of rain and the cold and also some intimidation forced numbers to dwindle quite considerably. However, the demonstrators I've been speaking to believe that today there is that push, there is the urgency to ensure that they continue in huge numbers come out.
Just to clarify, is there any sign of pro-Mubarak supporters there? The pictures we see there, we see everyone carrying the placards and the Egyptian flags. Is there any semblance of opposition to these pro-democracy protesters?
Not really, no, not at all. I mean, yesterday there was a very brief incident late into the night when roughly about 100 to 200 pro-Mubarak supporters or thugs, depending on which narration you choose to believe, charged or attempted to charge the thousands who had gathered outside Sidi Gabr train station who were trying to sit there and protest. Many of these pro-Mubarak individuals had clubs, even a couple I saw had swords and machetes. However, there was a sizable, not massive, but there was a sizable amount of military presence there. There was also the people themselves had taken extra precautions to ensure that they protected themselves, to ensure that there wasn't a reoccurrence of the violent scenes that we saw the day before that, not only in Tahrir in Cairo, but also in Alexandria. So they managed to push those pro-Mubarak supporters away. Since then, and I should also note that yesterday's demonstration was very easily in the hundreds of thousands here in Alexandria. It was by far the largest gathering of people that I've seen in Alexandria, and I've been traveling to Alexandria for many years. So it's very difficult to see or gauge that there is much of a pro-Mubarak base here. Obviously, Alexandria is a stronghold for the banned Muslim Brotherhood, but it is also evident that there are secular, non-Muslim, liberal, Christian, and other factions who were part of the demonstrations. In fact, one of the main speeches that was given at the rally yesterday as it arrived at its destination was targeting one of the news agencies which claimed that the demonstration was full of Muslim Brotherhood, and the speaker said, actually, in fact, this is not true. And he asked the crowd, are you from the Muslim Brotherhood? And the vast majority response was, no, we are not. No, we are not. So that just gives you an idea of the huge background and variety of the anti-government, pro-democracy supporters here in Alexandria. Come on.
All right, so there's a description of what's been going on in the last 24 hours, certainly, in Egypt's second city of Alexandria. Thank you for that. I want to move to the political side of things in this story, because there's talk of Omar Suleiman, the vice president, meeting opposition leaders in Egypt. If he does that, who? Who can you expect to talk to? Let's run through some of them for you. Mohamed El-Baradei, of course, set up the coalition of political forces and movements known as the National Association for Change, but critics say he came to the protest movement too late. El-Baradei does have the backing, though, of the banned Muslim Brotherhood, an Islamist group that is Egypt's most organised opposition group. You've got Ayman Noor as well, heavily involved in the pro-democracy protests. He heads the Al-Ghad party.